Hello and welcome everyone to the Ucommerce product update event, June of 2022. I think we're going to give everyone a couple of more minutes to join up and for everyone to be here. So if you want to grab a beverage or settle in, and we're going to get started here at maybe 2 minutes past or so. In the meantime, we have the chat open on the right side. So if you want to leave a little hello message just to make sure that you can hear me, that would be very much appreciated. Perfect, there we go. Welcome everyone. All right, I think let's kick it off. Hopefully whoever wanted to join has joined. Otherwise, they're just going to jump in as we go. Welcome again to the Ucommerce Product Update event 2022, June. Hopefully we'll have a couple of more of these as we go along. I want to get a couple of the practicalities, webinar practicalities out of the way before we get into the content, but we're just going to breeze through this because I want to get to the good stuff as quickly as possible here. No need to worry. You are all automatically muted and there's no cameras. So if there's any noise around you, don't worry. No one else can hear you. It's just me being able to speak today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please leave them in the chat. I have it open here. I can see everyone. And I'm going to try to get back to the questions towards the end of the presentation. We have quite a bit of time set aside just in case you have plenty of questions to ask. I don't think that we're going to run the entire hour down, even with questions. So there's a good chance that we're going to be out of here quite faster than 5 o'clock. And I think that is all that you need to know. But if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat and we're going to get back to it. So a little bit before I jump forward, a little bit about myself. I am David Kaliman. Don't worry about the last name, just call me David. I'm the product manager here at Ucommerce. And before being a product manager, I was a backend developer for about 7 years, closing in on 7 years. And I want to highlight some of the many responsibilities I have here that are relevant to the presentation and the reason that we're here for today. One of those is that I get to use Ucommerce on a daily basis. And I get to do that from the perspective of our users. And what I mean by our users, I mean both the end users of the platform, those who work with the platform on a daily basis, with our UIs, they experience the product as it works, as it functions. And also from the perspective of our partners, right? Because I have done development for many years, including Ucommerce development for many years, I get to work with the product as you would as you're creating solutions. And the really cool thing about this is because I can try all the cool stuff that the team is working on right now and make sure that the product that we end up delivering is going to be pleasing and is going to be what you expect at the end of the day to get. Of course, as part of this role, I also get to talk to you, and I know I can see that with many of you I have already talked to before, and if I haven't yet, then don't worry, I will for sure. And I can take all that feedback and all those insights back to the team, and we can work on making sure that what we deliver is what you want and what you need. Another really cool part of my job here is that I get to talk about Ucommerce. I get to evangelize the product, both internally to the team, so that we can make sure that everyone is on the same page as to why we're doing the things we're doing, why are we doing them now as opposed to later, why are we doing it the way we're doing it. but also externally, and that's why we're here today. And today is not going to be too much about Ucommerce as a long-term roadmap. We talk about that quite often, and we will, of course, talk about it at a different event. This particular event is about the fairly short-term roadmap looking into the future. So I guess we gave away the fact that we're going to be talking about Ucommerce 10 in our agenda for the event. So that is what we're here to talk about today. It's Ucommerce 10 and how that contributes to you building unique and powerful e-commerce solutions in the future. So ever since the existence of Ucommerce, we had two key, let's say, mantras that we have worked with. And I haven't been here for 12 years, but I have been here for 7. And I can attest to the fact that these two have always been at the center of everything that we do. And I'll just explain very briefly. So content and commerce, right? The company was born out of this idea. It is connecting content and commerce together to create digital experiences. And even though these two concepts are so vastly different domains from each other, we consider ourselves experts in commerce, and we can connect that expertise with the expertise of those who do content better, and we connect the two, marry the two together for you to be able to design these powerful e-commerce solutions that you can today. The other thing, our other goal is to make Ucommerce the most flexible e-commerce platform in existence. That means all the things that you love and know about Ucommerce, the fact that it's extensible, the fact that it can cater to all the different requirements that you may have, because no two e-commerce solutions are ever the same. There's always different requirements, there's always different needs, and that is more true today than it has ever been. So why did I bring this up today, and why is this important to know right now? Because as with every industry, e-commerce is also changing. And I want to bring this quote along from the January 2022 MEL research, quoting that 79% of tech leaders are looking to increase composable elements in their architecture in the next 12 months. Now, I love this quote because it doesn't assume that all of these solutions and all of these monolithic, or let's call them suite solutions, are going to disappear one day to another. It just means that tech companies are looking to extract the more critical, sometimes the more problematic, sometimes simply the easiest thing that to decouple from the rest of the digital experience platform, and do it in a more decoupled, composable way. And that is done because of a couple of reasons that I'm going to talk about very briefly here in a minute. I picked out a couple of the drivers that really highlight why this is happening at such a fast pace today. Because let's be honest, technologically speaking, this makes perfect sense. We all know that a monolith or a large suite solution has its pros, of course, and has its cons. And one of its cons is that the larger they are, the harder they fall, which means that if part of the system is misbehaving or is broken or needs adjustments or even replacement, it becomes really difficult without doing that in a way that doesn't break the rest of the system. And one of the main drivers for this transition towards composable headless solutions is the customer experience. There is a very vile competition out there today in competing for the user's attention, let's put it that way, which means that it's not enough anymore to simply create a web shop and expect to be able to go live, be able to access your products, be able to ship and complete orders. That's e-commerce. That used to be e-commerce for a really long time, but that's not all there is to e-commerce today. The attention of the users is the most important thing, and we want to create these truly unique experiences that will drive people in to essentially shop at your stores. And to follow that up, it's not enough. What I mean by saying it's not enough to have a web shop, it's because you want to be available where your customers are available. If they are online, a web shop is perfectly fine and will do. But what if they're on mobile? What if they're on social media? What if they're on about in physical stores? You have to cater to all of that. And so omnichannel has become much more pronounced because of the very simple reason that there are more channels popping up. And to provide a unified customer experience over all of those channels is becoming a very, very powerful driver for this movement in technology towards composability. And last but not least, of course, a large solution that can do everything can be quite inflexible. And in order to keep up with those unique customer experiences, we also want systems to pick systems that can keep up with those changing requirements. Now, those are not the only drivers that are driving composability forward at such a fast rate as we're seeing today. There's, of course, performance. There's, of course, time to market. But these are the ones that we are seeing are the most dominant forces in the market right now. And the reason I wanted to start with this is because I want to explain to you today on how we're tackling this change in the industry and how we're going to be part of to drive this transformation alongside you. So we're going to start with outlining a couple of the challenges that we have in order to really be this platform today. Ever since Ucommerce existed, we have always been available in the Umbraco ecosystem. That has been the case for every major version up until version 8. Now, you can have a really good and solid solution today with Ucommerce 9 and Umbraco 9 as well. But due to the lack of the integration, the content and commerce being connected together, this really becomes a piece of the puzzle where you have to do quite a lot of the orchestration for the data yourself. What I mean by that is you will have to do all of that in your actual digital experience. In your solution, you will need to marry content and commerce yourself to a certain degree. And we, of course, being part of the Umbraco ecosystem for as many years as we have, that is a challenge that we need to solve. Unpredictable installations and upgrades. What I mean by this is that we know that there has been quite a bit of hesitation and problematic upgrades with Ucommerce. And we want to be able to deliver upgrades and new features and cool things and improvements into your hands as quickly as possible. Right? That's the dream of every product company, really. And we want to do this in a much more predictable, safe manner, so you don't really have to worry about something going wrong besides the scope of what you know up front, right? If there has been product changes that you have to accustom for, that's fine. But we want the upgrades to work seamlessly without you having to worry about it. And that's, I actually, the other day, as part of my playing with the platform, I was sitting at my computer and I wanted to set up Ucommerce 10 because I get to do that. And I've set it up and, a couple of lines of code and I get it all running. And I realized that I actually wanted to take some notes, take a couple of screenshots along the way for something that I'm preparing for another time. And I kind of slumped back into my chair thinking, dang it, now I have to do it all over again. Because that's been sort of how things have been before. I had to, go back to a clean installation of my CMS that would then host Ucommerce. I would have to then install Ucommerce, possibly natively via the packaging infrastructure of the CMS, and eventually get back to the point I was. It's just really tedious and it takes time. And I kind of realized that that is not the case anymore with the product that we're preparing for you today. It's really, really so much faster and so much simpler to this because all I had to do was pick the right NuGet package, create a brand new solution, not worry at all anything about the CMS, and just press install, add one line of setup code, and press start. And that's all there is to it. That's just a little anecdote. I'm going to get right back to that once we're talking about some of the solutions that we have for some of these challenges. So another challenge that we're facing is performance. Now, over the past couple of years, Ucommerce have advanced very, very rapidly in terms of performance. We have come out with completely new set of user interfaces because, let's be honest, the old ones were simply slow due to the technology, due to their age. So that has helped alleviate the problems quite a bit. Probably an even bigger improvement was our introduction of Project Bolt, a search engine implementation using Lucene and Elasticsearch to really be able to provide your experience with the data that it needs in a really, really blazingly fast manner. But there is still a lot that we can do here, and we're still being held back partially by the framework and by the tools that we are using, and partially by some of the more legacy elements of the system that we have. And just to go back to that monolith example, it's also valid for us internally. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, which means that if the system is big and interconnected, it also means naturally that it is slower. So that's also something we are actively looking at. Now, this one I've mentioned before, but I just wanted to highlight it separately as its own thing as well. We want to iterate faster. We want a more solid baseline that where we can get features into your hands, features, fixes, improvements into your hands as quickly as possible. It's really as simple as that. We want to be faster. We want to be more efficient. And last but not least, this is a personal favorite of mine, talent acquisition and retention. And this is something that we deal with internally, and we also see a lot of our partners, and not just our partners, in general, the industry, and actually broader than that, tech companies in general deal with currently quite a lot. Why is this a problem now? It's because the best people, the best tech people, the best engineers, the best developers, they want to work with the best tools, the most up-to-date tools, the newest tools. And that's not out of vanity. That's because they want to be able to spend a majority of their time on actually building valuable features, valuable solutions to real-life problems. And they don't want to be held back by the technology stack that they're using, or they don't want to re-implement things that potentially a newer framework or a newer technology might give that for them for free. So this is also something that we're looking at with Ucommerce STEM. Great. So now we've covered most of the challenges that we are facing in getting us to that point that I've talked about before, which is being able to give you a product that really unleashes you in terms of being able to create unique digital, or even beyond that, customer experiences in all of those channels unified. So time to talk about what Ucommerce STEM actually is. First and foremost, we are migrating the entirety of the Ucommerce platform from .NET Framework to .NET 6. And in on itself, a technical change is, of course, not a solution. It's a means to an end. But it is going to form the baseline for everything that we do in the future. It makes the application faster, and we get so many features that we otherwise had to cater for ourselves that we no longer have to do. So it is also true for us that we now get to create a product and solve valuable problems on a daily basis, rather than have to wrestle the technology, which is supposed to be there to support us in our journey, and not the other way around. So the migration to .NET 6 is actually a basis for a lot of improvements that we're going to be doing to Ucommerce along the way, and I'll come back to that in a second. Because this is also very, very important, and I want to spend some time on this one. Ucommerce, for the first time ever, is becoming a standalone product. What that means is what I mentioned before. You can spin up a new solution entirely on its own. You can pick out the right abstraction or the right granularity of NuGet package that you want to use, depending on what kind of solution you're working on. You might want to be running a full Ucommerce installation as you have done so far. You might just want our APIs to be in place, or really you might just want something less or more core to Ucommerce for your integration projects. And you press install on that package, and if you want an up and running Ucommerce installation, you add one line of code to your startup file, and you press F5. And there is no CMS involved in this whatsoever. Ucommerce just spins up and runs all on its own. So this is one of our ways to enable those elements of composability that I was mentioning before in the MEL research. Commerce is such a prime candidate to being that one critical aspect of your solution that you actually break out to manage separately. And this is one piece of the puzzle that will let you do that or encourage you to do that. So this is our way, so to speak, to crack that monolith open and work in a more composable way. Now, this also ties in really well with my point from before, where I mentioned we want you to have confidence in upgrading Ucommerce. Because Ucommerce is now a standalone product, it means that it can also be upgraded independently from the CMS, which means that we internally no longer have to worry about catering for different kind of package installation frameworks, whether something is aligned with that or not. We just have to worry about the one Ucommerce product where we can really make sure that upgrades happen in a controlled and expected environment, which allows us to do a lot of really cool stuff faster. And definitely not least, content and commerce. When I say Ucommerce is independent or Ucommerce is standalone, it doesn't mean that content and commerce is gone. Quite the opposite. When you do build a solution with headless platforms, it is implied that you will have quite a lot of flexibility. You can create a truly unique digital experience, but you will have to do some groundwork in order to orchestrate your data, right? So you're getting your commerce elements from the commerce platform, you're getting your content from the CMS, you're getting from your digital assets from a DAM system, and then you do all that orchestration yourself. And you can still do that, and that's perfectly viable. However, we want to make it easier to connect your content and commerce together. And the way we're going to go about that is by introducing a new integration model for Ucommerce 10. The new integration model allows Ucommerce to actually integrate with a CMS that does not live together in the same instance as Ucommerce. So this also means that you can have your Umbraco 9 installation scaled and hosted independently from your Ucommerce instance. Now, the first integration that we're going to be delivering will be for Umbraco 9 and forward, but of course, the other CMSs will follow as well. And last but not least, platform improvements. And I have left a QR code there if you, I'm going to be on this slide for a little while and talk about it. If you want to check it out, it's a blog post, not because I wrote it, but because there's a lot of information there about the new Ucommerce 10 that I will not be covering today, simply because it is either quite technical, so there's a lot of screenshots about actual code snippets, but also just because this is a higher level presentation. But if you're interested in some more detailed complexities, then please have a look at that blog post. And of course, at the end of the presentation, I will also have the link to our blog so that you can check that out as well. But what are we talking when we say platform improvements? Depending on who I talk to, when I mention migrating Ucommerce from .NET Framework to .NET 6, I generally get two kinds of responses. Either the person or people think that we are rebuilding Ucommerce from ground up, and it's going to be a completely different product when it comes out. That is not the case. We are not here. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel. If you've worked with Ucommerce, if you know Ucommerce, you're going to recognize Ucommerce. Quite a lot of the platform is being migrated over, aka moved to the new framework, but Ucommerce stays the same. The other kind of response that I get is, oh, you're probably just moving Ucommerce. You're probably just moving the code over, and then that's it. It's also not that, because it's also a lot more than that. We are actually doing quite a lot of updates. So the truth falls somewhere in the middle. Some of the improvements that we're making because we want Ucommerce to be better. All of the improvements we're making because we want Ucommerce to be better. But some of the improvements we're doing because we now have this technology at our fingertips in the new framework that allows us to do all of this cool stuff without us having to cater it for ourselves. So some examples off the top of my head. Inversion of control, right? 12 years ago when Ucommerce came out, inversion of control has been sort of around, but not natively in .NET Framework. That is, of course, completely changed in .NET 6. So you're going to see, yes, we are getting rid of Castle Windsor entirely. There are no more magical string identifiers that you need to keep track of. The whole thing becomes code-driven. It becomes much more stable, much more native to work with. Another really good thing to this is that if you have developers who know how to work with the framework, all of this will be very, very familiar to them, which means that they don't have to learn how to do this specifically for Ucommerce, but they will know how to do it just because they know how to do this in every kind of application that they work with on a daily basis. We're also doing really big improvements to our data access. So those things are going to change, just to name a couple. App configuration is moving around. We're working a lot on the stability of the application in different kinds of deployment scenarios. So for example, if you are looking to scale Ucommerce and work in a scaled multi-tenant environment, we want to make sure that we cater for that much more than we used to before. And we are also working on adding more elements of code level extensibility to the platform. So if you are sort of know Ucommerce and you know about pipelines, as part of this transition, it is natural for us to just add more pipelines that will allow you to extend Ucommerce much further than you could before. I have a question here from Michael that says, what does it mean to be much more native code to work with? Well, so here's for example, something that I can think of just off the top of my head. As I said, inversion of control, it has not been around back when Ucommerce started, or at least not at the level that we have it at today. So if you have a new developer joining a project that you're using Ucommerce for, you will not have to teach them specifically how to do inversion of control specifically for Ucommerce, how to register new components, how to extend Ucommerce, because all of that is done the same way as you would do with any other .NET 6 based application. So if they have some experience from there, that experience directly translates into working with Ucommerce. So it's just one of those examples that we align with the framework. We take advantage of the tools that we're working with. And so it happens that the tools that we work with are the same tools that the developer community is aware of and works with on a daily basis. So hopefully that just makes things a lot faster and easier to work with. So I talked about adding more. I hope that answered the question. Otherwise, please just follow up and I'll try to get back. So we talked about adding more integration points and making code level extensibility easier. So the reason I wanted to spend so much time on this one is because I want to highlight that and set the expectations that we're not reinventing the wheel by creating a completely new Ucommerce product. But the Ucommerce product that you get with Ucommerce 10 is going to be quite different from Ucommerce. It's going to be recognizable. All of the concepts and all of the features that you're used to will be there, but some things might work quite differently. And that's because of efficiency, and that's because we get a lot of power out of the framework that we're going to be using. Again, if you would like to learn a little more, a couple of technical examples, please check out the blog post from the QR code. So I promised myself that I'm not going to make a big slide with a lot of text on it, and this is my failure. But I want to excuse myself because I'm not going to read all of this. I'm not even going to address all of these points in this presentation, but I wanted to have this here as a reference for you, and later when the video on demand comes out as well, that there is a lot of things that we're looking to achieve with Ucommerce Stand. But since we're here and we're live, I want to highlight one of them, and that is that Ucommerce 10 is also an important step for us towards a SaaS Ucommerce future. We have talked a lot about our roadmap, and we have set our goal to become a headless software as a service solution with Ucommerce. And even though that is the far future, so we're not going to dive too deep into it, Ucommerce 10 is also a very important stepping stone in that direction because it will allow us to do a lot of things much faster in order to get there. And the end product is going to be absolutely worth it. So just to highlight an example of how a solution could look like with Ucommerce 10. Now, this is, if you have done Ucommerce solutions before, you'll see that this is not particularly different from what you have today, but there's a couple of key differences between how it used to be and how this will allow you to build these more decoupled architectures in the future. So one important thing here is that the arrows are actually don't represent integrations within the same system. They actually represent decoupled platforms that communicate to each other headlessly. Now, I say this is an example because, of course, Umbraco or any other CMS that you might be using might actually be the anchor point for your customer experience. You might be building your pages and your content all around that, and that is okay. In the future, however, you have Ucommerce 10 to communicate with headlessly and handle your transactional data that way. You have the Elasticsearch instance, again, separately, to get your catalog data from. And there is that one very, very, very important arrow between the Umbraco 9 box and Ucommerce 10 box. And that is the thing that Ucommerce 10 will bring along, that integration with Umbraco 9 without the two boxes being together in the same instance. Now, if we look a little further into the future, we, of course, want to remove that arrow between Elasticsearch and the customer experience as well by expanding our headless APIs for you to be able to retrieve your catalog data from Ucommerce as well from our APIs and not from Elasticsearch. So this is a setup similar to this is possible today with Ucommerce 9, but there are some elements missing that put some extra work on you and your orchestration of your data and creating the actual end product. Whereas with Ucommerce 10, we aim to make this a lot simpler, and we aim to take some of that burden off and orchestrate some of the content and commerce of your solution ourselves and hand it down to you in the best possible way. So where are we with Ucommerce today? Now that we know sort of what Ucommerce 10 entails, I want to talk about progress of the migration of the project today. We have migrated all of the infrastructure of Ucommerce. So all of the building blocks, like I said, IOC, data access, is all already in place, and it looks and works really, really nicely. We have a couple of the larger subsystems of Ucommerce, catalog management, complete with store management, catalogs, categories, products. So you can actually install Ucommerce 10 today and go in and modify your prices and create stores, and all of that works perfectly today. We have also migrated the promotions area of Ucommerce as another subsystem. And we are just about on the brink of finishing the migration of our search engine. And I mentioned exclusively Elasticsearch on the previous slide. And that's important to know that the first version of Ucommerce will come with Elasticsearch as the search provider exclusively. And that's simply because Elasticsearch will cater to a lot of scenarios that Lucene could not. So if we were to pick one of the two to be able to cater for more scenarios, we're going with Elasticsearch. So that leaves us with what is left to still migrate during the project. We need to migrate our APIs, and of course, this highlights the headless APIs. And a very important point here, and I hope that you take this away with you after this presentation, is that the headless APIs are the future way of building solutions with Ucommerce. We are also committed to keeping them stable between Ucommerce 9 and Ucommerce 10. So that if you are today using the headless APIs, you have the best chance of having an easier migration path to Ucommerce 10. We still have the orders management subsystem and the permissions subsystems to migrate. And I want to also mention that permission management will come with a completely new visual and hierarchical overhaul. So you will have in the new user interface design. So it will be quite simplified and hopefully much easier to understand how to work with permissions in Ucommerce 10 for your customers. And then lastly, we have the payment framework to migrate, and then the Umbraco integration. And that will round up the first public release of Ucommerce 10. Another thing I would like to mention here is we are committed to communicate progress more often than otherwise, because this project is quite large. It is a really, really big change for both the product and for your solutions in the future. So if you would like to know more, stay tuned on our blog and our social media, because we're going to be publishing news and updates much more frequently than ever before, really. So I promised in the agenda that I'm going to leave you with a couple of tips on how to best prepare for Ucommerce 10. And I have to give a big disclaimer here. There is no direct upgrade path between Ucommerce 9 and Ucommerce 10. This is simply because the two frameworks, the product is built on completely different technologies. However, we want to make sure that your Ucommerce data, your commerce data, can be migrated from older versions of Ucommerce straight into a Ucommerce 10 installation. We will do that for you by virtue of you pointing your solution at an existing database, and we're going to do all the work for you. And there will be quite a bit of work to do there, because we are also doing quite a bit of spring cleaning. We are actually tidying up the platform. So there are quite a lot of changes that will happen to your data, but we will make sure that all of your commerce data gets transitioned to Ucommerce 10 without you losing anything, and everything being just prepared perfectly for Ucommerce 10. So the first thing that you can do is consider upgrading to Ucommerce 9.6. Not only is Ucommerce 9.6 a long-term support version of Ucommerce, which means that from the release date of Ucommerce 10, we will be shipping potential bug fixes and potential security upgrades to the platform. It is also the most complete and most stable version of Ucommerce in general. But another thing you get by upgrading to Ucommerce 9.6 is that is where you will have the fewest changes between what you have and what Ucommerce will have to offer. So you're doing yourself a favor in the ease of migration in the future. Another thing that you can do is actually separate Ucommerce out from your customer experience, from your actual solution. And that ties in perfectly with the point number 3, is that you should use exclusively our headless APIs and Elasticsearch to communicate with Ucommerce. Like I said before, we are committed to keeping the headless API stable, which means that really when Ucommerce 10 comes out, those touch points with the system will not change. so that piece of the system remains stable. If you have sort of any questions about, maybe you have a solution today that you would like to prepare, maybe you have questions about how a setup is going to look like in Ucommerce 10 from a more technical perspective, then please reach out. I will have a link here in a second on one of the next slides to our solutions team at support@ucommerce.net, and they'll be very happy to help you out answering your technical questions. So we're ending the presentation, but before we go, I want to thank you very, very much for all of your feedback and your impressions that you send us on a daily basis. Myself and part of the team here, we look at all the feedback that you get, and we actually file them away in sort of a structure where we know what are the most important pain points, what are the most requested features of Ucommerce. So if you have any feedback, any impressions for Ucommerce as a product so far or for the future of Ucommerce, please send it to feedback@ucommerce.net. If you have any product-related questions, be that about the roadmap, be that about the product today, or even about Ucommerce 10, you can email me directly. That is my email address. I'll make sure to give you the most detailed answer in due time as I humanly can. Like I said before, if you have any technical questions for solutions today or for upcoming solutions, that is the email address for our solutions team. And lastly, our ucommerce.net blog, which is where I'm going to be posting updates as we know more about Ucommerce 10. The moment I have more technical details, examples, so there's a lot of cool things coming to the blog. So if you can check that out, that's where you can get your news. I think that about covers my presentation. So if you have any questions, I'm going to stay here for a couple more minutes to see if I can answer any of them live, or if you're a person that likes to process overnight and questions tend to come up the next day, then like I said, please send them my way and I'll make sure to answer them as quickly as possible. And you have the links from the slide in chat as well. And if we have no questions, then I think there's no reason to drag this out longer. Then I wish you all a very pleasant rest of your week and expect to hear a lot more from us on the other side of the summer holidays.